Sean Gathright, the individual whose house she left from to come to Tampa, the individual who was driving the Chevy Impala that she was sitting in for almost 3.5 hours driving to Tampa on the 22nd, the individual who was best friends with her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance. She's shown that photograph. I don't know who that is. I don't know. I don't know who that is. And you will see in the evidence that these lies are nonchalant lies. Her demeanor with these homicide detectives. They show her video. They show her all this video. And in the middle of this litany of lies that's coming out of her mouth, there's a couple little kernels of truth. Namely, she identifies herself in the teaser's video in the parking lot with Isaiah Chance wearing the mask. She identifies herself in the Truth 18 video. She identifies herself, like I said earlier, at the McDonald's in the Chevy Cruze. But she doesn't know who Davion Murphy is. They ask her, well, who is this guy? How did he end up driving this car that you're in? I don't know. Now, on the 26th of June, this is in Jacksonville. This is Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. They pull that 4Runner over, Sean Gathright driving, and they pull him over for a traffic infraction. They get him out of the car, and they end up searching that 4Runner. And inside of the 4Runner, they find several items: Glock magazines, a Glock extended magazine, components for AR-15 rifles, including a brace, magazine holders, ammunition, and a box full of empty .223 and 5.56 shell casings. Now, you're going to hear in the evidence, if you're not already aware of this, that a 5.56 rifle, an AR rifle, can shoot .223 ammunition. They're almost interchangeable. And there's multiple empty casings in this box. They also find these two boxes, each containing 50 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Max Tech. On the top of the cartridge casings, on the head stamp, where the primer is MXT for Max Tech. That is the exact same ammunition as the 9mm shell casings found in the crime scene. All of those shell casings found, and there was 31 of them found outside of the home to suites. They're all Max Tech, all the same ammunition, the same as these is ammunition found in Mr. Gathright's vehicle. And I'll come back to that. These shell casings, .223, 5.56, those shell casings are later provided to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is a statewide agency here in the state of Florida that maintains crime laboratories throughout the state. We have one right here, a regional laboratory here in Tampa, and there's one in Jacksonville, and they're both involved in this case. And they are submitted to the firearms section, to firearms analysts who analyze those shell casings, comparing them to the shell casings from the October 7th attack on Charles Jones, where he was shot in the leg. And they are fired from the same weapon. The analyst will tell you they were fired from the same weapon. She will tell you that was shell casings. She examines them microscopically and compares them and looks at markings that are left on the shell casings, markings that are left by the breech face of the gun, by the extractor ejectors inside the firearms, and by primer shear, as it's called, when the primer goes off. And by primer, talking about this little dot here in the middle of the gun where the firing pin hits, causing a very teeny explosion that then ignites the gunpowder inside the shell casing, the gunpowder that sits behind the bullet and pushes it out. She examines all of those areas, and she came to the conclusion those were fired from the same gun that was used to attack Charles Jones on October 7th in Jacksonville. Seth I'm sorry, I keep calling him Seth, Sean Gathrights house. There's the forerunner. A search warrant is executed on that house in the days after this murder. And one of the things they find in the sink and water is all this torn up packaging. And when they start looking at the packaging, it's all firearm related. That is a 6 Alpha Romeo 05 package. These are Magpul, which is a firearms manufacturer of components for AR-15 rifles, also manufacturer of magazines. They find basically an arsenal within this house. And what they determined from their search is that Sean Gathright, was the weapons man on this team. He is the man that provided the AR-15 5.56 caliber rifle and the AR-15 300 blackout rifle in this attack. There are ammo boxes full of 300 blackout and 5.56 ammunition. In this safe, they find multiple weapons to include rifles and brass catchers. That is a brass catcher. It has a wire structure with netting or mesh, and it's designed to be fitted onto a rifle where when the shell is ejecting, like I said earlier, the casings remain in that mesh. And in this mesh, this detached brass catcher, they found 2 9mm shell casings that somehow worked their way in there. Those shell casings are Max Tech ammunition, the same kind of ammunition that's found in this defendant's, Mr. Gathwright's forerunner. Those shell casings are submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, to the firearms section for analysis. And they're analyzed and they're compared to a shell casing from our crime scene. And the firearms examiner will tell you they were fired from the same weapon, a Glock firearm. That weapon was not recovered in this case. It was never found. They find this rifle, 300 blackout, with the brass catcher attached. And when I say brass, brass, if you don't already know, and you'll hear in the evidence, is a common term for shell casings. Once they're fired and they come out of the gun, it's called brass. It's just a common way of referring to those. And so the brass catcher is still attached to this firearm. And you see it on the opposite side. This firearm is also located, this 5.56, and that brass catcher, as I said, had been detached already. There are multiple magazines located and loaded magazines. Those are loaded with 300 blackout 30 caliber rounds. Ammo boxes. This is back at the sheriff's office in Jacksonville, where this ammunition was inventoried after collection from Mr. Gathwright's house. And you can see all of the different type of ammunition he had.